When you've spent your entire life giving your time, your money, your memories, your back, your sleep, you start to believe, somewhere deep in your bones, that one day all that giving will circle back. That maybe, when you're older and the house is too quiet and your joints ache like old hinges, someone will say, "Thank you." Not in a grand way, just in a small moment that lets you know you mattered. That's what I believed when I planned the Christmas trip. That belief was the reason I sold my snowblower, canceled my Netflix, wore a coat with a broken zipper for 2 winters, and said no to every little indulgence so I could say yes to a single, perfect week in Aspen with the people I love most. But I was wrong. So wrong. It started 2 years ago, in the middle of a snowstorm. I was standing by the front window of my home in Boulder, Colorado, watching the flakes fall thick and soft like powdered sugar over the lawn. A memory flickered, me and Harold, my late husband, standing in that same spot 40 years ago, mugs of hot cocoa in our hands, arguing over whether we could afford to take Evan, our only son, to the mountains for Christmas. We didn't go. Money was too tight, like it always was back then. But Harold looked at me and said, "One day, Judy, when the time's right, we'll make it up to him. We'll take him somewhere beautiful." Harold passed before that promise could come true, so I made it my mission. I wanted this to be a redemption trip, not just for the lost holidays, but for all the little ways life had passed us by. I imagined the grandkids making snow angels on the lodge lawn, Evan pulling his wife Tanya close in front of the fire, and me finally feeling like the glue that held something beautiful together. For once, not just the background figure, silent, helpful, invisible, but part of the picture. I opened a notebook and titled the first page, "Parker Family Christmas, Aspen Plan." I underlined it 3 times. From that day on, I saved like it was a second job. No more ordering from QVC. No more chai lattes on Friday mornings. No new shoes, even when the soles wore thin. I packed groceries with coupons so tight you'd think I was feeding an army. Every penny had a purpose, and every purpose was that trip. I worked too. At 73, I picked up part-time caregiving for seniors who needed help bathing or remembering their medication. The job paid little, but it added up, and I liked the work. It reminded me that I still had something to offer, that I was still useful to someone. By month 6, I had enough for the lodge deposit. By year 1, I had the car rentals, lift passes, and snow gear purchased. By the 18th month, I'd booked the private chef for Christmas Eve dinner, just like Evan loved when he was a kid. Mac and cheese from scratch, roasted ham with brown sugar glaze, chocolate peppermint cookies, and hot cider with cinnamon sticks. Everything was under my name. Every transaction logged in a folder I labeled Dream Trip. I had charts and backup plans, allergy notes for Tanya's mom, room assignments that kept the grandkids near their parents, but gave everyone space. I even hand-embroidered scarves for each child with their initials in silver thread. I'd wrap them in red boxes with gold ribbon. They'd be waiting by the fireplace when the kids came downstairs on Christmas morning. I could see it all so clearly. I booked a 4-bedroom lodge with a view of the Rockies. There was a stone fireplace, a cedar deck, and a long wooden dining table where we'd sit together finally. Completely, I imagined Evan raising a glass to say, "Mom, thank you for making this happen." That one sentence would have made the 2 years worth it. But that's not how this revenge story goes. Before the heartbreak, there was so much hope. I bought myself a small lavender candle, Harold's favorite scent, and tucked it away in the drawer beside my nightstand. I wanted to light it that night in front of the whole family. I'd bring his photo, the one where he's laughing in the snow, wearing that ridiculous ear flap hat he loved. We'd raise a toast to him, each of us saying one word we remembered him by. Steady, kind, funny, present. That's what I wanted to create. A moment that pulled us all back to what mattered. A reminder that family, real family, doesn't forget where it came from. I even called the lodge to ask if we could set up a fire pit outside on Christmas night for a memory circle. They said yes. I cried after that call, not because I was sad, but because it felt like Harold was in the details. It felt like he was still part of it. I made a photo book too, printed all our best memories. Evan as a toddler on the swings, Tanya and Evan dancing at their wedding, me holding my first grandbaby in the hospital, eyes red from crying. I planned to hand it to Evan on Christmas Eve and say, "This is how much I've loved you." But love, I've learned, doesn't always circle back. Sometimes it just disappears into the people we give it to. Looking back, I don't regret the work or the saving or even the quiet dinners alone while I skipped nights out to save a few dollars. What I regret is believing that being the one who gave meant I would be the one kept close. It came at 9:42 p.m. 2 nights before the trip. I was in the living room, carefully placing the embroidered scarves into a canvas tote I'd bought just for the grandkids. The fireplace crackled in the background, fake, electric, but warm enough to make the room feel cozy. I'd even played a bit of Christmas music earlier. Silent Night, the version with the violin that always made me think of Harold. My phone buzzed on the side table. I wiped my hands on my sweater, picked it up, and read the message. "Hey, Mom, just wanted to give you a heads up. Tanya prefers to keep the trip simple and stress-free. Just us. We figured it's best you take this time to relax. You've already done more than enough." I remember blinking, like the words would rearrange themselves into something else if I gave them time. Just us. I stared at the screen, reading it again. Just us. You've already done more than enough. As if my presence, my love, my effort, my heart had a due date, and I had passed it. As if I were a contractor who'd built the house but wasn't invited to live in it. As if I had been thanked, paid, and dismissed. The next text came before I could even breathe. "Please don't take it personally. It's just easier this way. Tanya's parents need space, and with the kids and all. You understand?" I didn't understand. Not even close. I placed the phone face down on the table. My hands, which had just been tucking little hand-stitched scarves into tissue paper, were now trembling. I sat there for a long time. The electric fireplace kept humming. A Christmas mug with half-cold tea sat beside me, the one that said grandmas make Christmas magical. It felt like a joke now. I didn't cry, not right away. I think I was too stunned to even hurt, but slowly, a dull ache started behind my breastbone. Like something warm and solid had caved in. I had imagined so many beautiful things: laughter, tears, connection. I had imagined being seen, but they didn't want me there. Not because I was sick, not because I was difficult, not because I had done anything wrong, but because I was unnecessary, invisible, forgettable. That's the kind of pain that doesn't come with yelling or accusations. It just sits in your chest and takes up space. I got up, walked slowly to the kitchen, and sat at the counter where I'd made dozens of peanut butter sandwiches for Evan when he was little. The tiles felt colder than usual. The light over the stove buzzed faintly, and I thought to myself, when did I become a burden in the family I built? If you're listening to this and you've ever felt like that, like the people you love most have quietly pushed you out of the frame, I want you to know you're not crazy. You're not overly sensitive. You're not dramatic. You're just finally seeing things as they are. And I see you because I've been there. After a while, I picked up my phone and opened the group message thread. The last message before Evan's was me, reminding everyone to bring their gloves and thermals. Tanya had hearted it, even sent a snowflake emoji. A snowflake. What a cruel metaphor. Fragile. Melting. Temporary. I scrolled back further. Photos of the kids playing in the snow last year. Me helping Olivia build her first snowman. I remembered her looking up at me and saying, "Grandma, you're better than YouTube's." Apparently, not better than Tanya's peace of mind. I checked my email. Maybe there had been a mistake. Maybe the booking had my name still attached. Maybe they'd just forgotten to tell me I was still part of it. I found the itinerary. 8 names. Evan. Tanya. Their 2 kids. Tanya's mom. Tanya's dad. Tanya's sister. Tanya's sister's boyfriend. Not me. Not mom. Not grandma. 8 seats. 8 guests, 1 lodge. I didn't cry. I laughed. Not loud, not bitter. Just that low, breathless kind of laugh that says, wow, so this is who I am to them. I looked around my home, the same one Evan grew up in. The same one Harold and I scraped together to buy, room by room. I saw the framed photo of Evan at age 6, missing his front teeth, hugging a plastic reindeer in front of our old apartment. He'd called me his best friend then. Now I was a line item removed from the trip for the sake of simplicity. I opened the pantry and pulled out a mason jar from the back of the top shelf. I called it the dream jar. No one knew that name but me. Inside was the leftover cash I hadn't yet deposited into the trip account. I held the jar up to the light and watched the coins and small bills glint. 2 years of choosing everyone else first, and now I wasn't chosen at all. I went to the desk drawer and pulled out the itinerary folder. Everything was in my name. My cards, my bookings, my sacrifice, but not my seat. That night, I didn't text Evan back. I didn't respond to Tanya's follow-up message. Just wanted to make sure you got the info. We'll share photos. Share photos. How generous. I poured a cup of tea, sat by the window, and watched the street grow quiet under the falling snow. I didn't sleep much, but I did decide one thing. I would not beg to be included in something I built. I would not ask for crumbs at the table I paid for. And I would never again confuse silence for peace. The next morning, I folded the same blanket 3 times. Not because it needed it, just because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. The air in the house felt heavier than usual. Not sad, not angry, just still, like the pause between breaths. I kept hearing Evan's words in my head. You've already done more than enough. What did that even mean? Enough for what? For them to feel comfortable taking my effort and erasing me in the same breath. I moved through the kitchen, wiped the already spotless counter, straightened the already aligned salt and pepper shakers. Everything looked just the way I'd left it, but nothing felt familiar anymore, especially not me. I didn't cry, not yet. I think I was still waiting for some kind of resolution, some follow-up call. A sorry, and I didn't mean it like that. Anything to make it feel like I had misunderstood. But nothing came. Instead, I checked the group text again. Tanya had just posted a photo. The kids posing next to their suitcases, wearing matching Christmas sweatshirts that read, Aspen Adventure, 2023, Just Us. Just Us. There it was again. Those 2 words cutting cleaner than a knife, like I had been edited out of the story and replaced with a catchphrase. I stared at the picture, looking for signs of hesitation. There weren't any, just smiles, excitement, anticipation. I wasn't a character in their holiday. I wasn't even a thought. And that realization, it didn't come like a punch. It came like a slow drip of cold water on the back of the neck, subtle, but relentless. I walked to my bedroom and opened the small duffel bag I'd packed a week earlier. 2 soft sweaters, 1 white sundress, a folded photo of Harold in a plastic frame, the lavender candle I planned to light on Christmas night by the fire. The matches were tucked in a Ziploc, labeled neatly. For the memory circle, I sat on the edge of the bed, holding that little bag in my lap, and I whispered aloud, it was supposed to mean something. It wasn't about the money. Not really. It wasn't even about the vacation. It was about the idea that I still had a place, that I was still the woman who held this family together. But I wasn't. Not anymore. They had let go of me long before this trip. I just hadn't noticed. Or maybe I had, and I just didn't want to believe it. You know, people think losing someone means funerals and black clothes and casseroles. But sometimes, the hardest kind of loss is the one no one else sees. The slow fade, the quiet absence, being excluded from the plans you created with love. I looked around the room. My Christmas decorations were still up. The snowflake wreath on the door. The ceramic nativity set on the bookshelf. The string of white lights I'd run along the mantle. I had done it all for the kids, for the feeling of togetherness. And yet here I was, alone, not sick, not broken, not impossible to be around. Just forgotten. No, not even forgotten. Excluded. Omitted. There's a difference. You know, being forgotten is passive. Accidental. But this was a decision. A quiet, deliberate decision to leave me out. And the worst part, they thought I'd be okay with it, that I'd sit quietly, accept it, and maybe even say, "Of course, I understand." Because that's what mothers do, right? We absorb the hurt so our children don't have to feel uncomfortable. But that's not love. That's erasure. I opened my laptop and clicked through the itinerary folder. I reread the resort email. 8 confirmed guests, 8 sets of lift passes, 8 dinner reservations, every detail carefully planned, without me, but still charged to me. I scrolled through the receipts. $7, $200 for the lodge, $3,000 for the rental cars, $2, $400 for ski gear and lessons, $800 for the private chefs, and dozens of little charges, snacks, crafts for the kids, matching mittens for the snow photos, over $18,000, not a penny from anyone else. Every payment pulled from the account I had built from scratch, the one linked to my retirement fund, the one labeled Legacy in my banking app, and I wasn't even going. I closed the laptop gently, like it might shatter if I moved too fast. Then I sat back, let my hands fall into my lap, and let the silence wash over me. It was the kind of silence that doesn't just fill a room. It settles inside your body, makes a home there, lives in your throat, your stomach, your chest. And in that silence, a thought came to me. Not loud, not angry, just clear. They never saw me as part of it, only as the one who paid for it. I had built a dream for them. One scarf, $1, one late night shift at a time. And they had taken it, smiled, packed their bags, and left me behind. I wish I could tell you I stood up right then, full of fire and resolve. But I didn't. I just sat there, stunned, because sometimes the most painful thing isn't the betrayal itself. It's the moment you realize it wasn't personal for them, but it was everything to you. The silence that followed wasn't just quiet, it was defining. It stretched across every room in my house, settling into the walls, the furniture, the space behind my ribs. By the third morning after Evan's message, I hadn't heard another word from him. Not a call, not a hey, just checking in. Tanya hadn't said anything else either, and honestly, that silence spoke louder than any apology ever could. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black tea, lukewarm and forgotten. Across from me sat the little snow globe I'd bought for Olivia. Inside, a red cabin nestled under plastic trees. I had chosen it because it looked like the lodge. Now, I couldn't even look at it without feeling my stomach tighten. They weren't sorry. That was the part that hit me hardest. They weren't sorry. Because to them, this wasn't cruel. This was normal, reasonable, efficient. They didn't forget me. They removed me. That morning, I opened the drawer in my desk and pulled out the documents. Lodge confirmation, rental car agreement, ski passes, dinner reservations. Every page stamped with my name, Judith Elaine Parker, account holder. No co-signers, no shared permissions. It had been mine, the whole thing. And they had the audacity to tell me I'd done enough. I logged into my bank account and went to the tab marked Legacy Fund. The balance blinked at me. $18,923.47. There it was, the cost of trust. I clicked into the account settings. A small link appeared at the bottom of the page, freeze all transactions. I hovered over it for a long time. One click, one quiet click, and everything, every card, every charge, every piece of that trip would stop. I thought of Evan standing at the airport kiosk, swiping a card that wouldn't go through. I thought of Tanya's pinched smile cracking in front of a confused ticket agent. I thought of the moment they'd look at each other and realize the trip they built on my back had no legs of its own. I didn't click it. Not yet. Instead, I opened a new document on my computer and typed 3 words at the top of the page, the women left out. Then I started listing names. Carol still wears her wedding ring, even though her husband's been gone 8 years. Frances hasn't heard from her daughter since Thanksgiving 3 years ago. Beverly, never been invited to her grandchildren's school plays. Nora once told me the worst part of aging is not the pain, but the invisibility. Denise used to host Christmas for her whole family until they started going to her son-in-law's instead. I sat back and read the list, and for the first time since that awful text, I didn't feel powerless, because I had something they didn't, something they never saw coming. Control. Not revenge, not spite, but clarity. And clarity is a kind of power no one teaches you about. It's quiet. It doesn't slam doors or raise its voice. It just shifts something deep inside you, realigns what you thought you had to tolerate. I stared out the window. Snow was falling again, fat, slow flakes drifting past the glass. I used to think snow was peaceful. Now, it felt like truth falling one layer at a time. I stood up and walked to the small safe under my bed. Inside, I kept the originals, passports, receipts, the account contract. I pulled them out and laid them flat on the dining room table, next to the candle I'd meant to light in Harold's memory. That candle hadn't been lit. Not yet, but it would be. Just not for the people I'd planned it for. And that's when I realized it. I didn't have to give up the dream. I just had to give it to different people. People who saw me, who valued the weight of a shared silence, who didn't smile while cutting me out of the frame. I'd give them the snow, the fire, the soft beds and the laughter and the space to grieve and heal and just be, because that's what I wanted, wasn't it? To create a moment where no one had to explain their worth. Well then, I'd do it. I picked up the phone, not to call Evan, but to dial the travel agent. Hi, this is Judith Parker. I'd like to change the names on my reservation. There was a pause on the other end. All names. Ma'am. All, I said. And I'll be paying for everything again. Myself. I could hear the clicking of the keyboard. May I ask the new guest names? I read them one by one. Names of women who had quietly survived the same kind of erasure, who had learned how to keep breathing even when no one remembered their birthdays. When I hung up, I felt taller, not happy, not even proud, just grounded, present. I went back to the bank site and clicked the button. Freeze all transactions. Confirm. Yes. And just like that, the illusion collapsed. Not my dream, but theirs. They had planned a trip on my generosity, and now they had nothing but empty confirmation emails and bouncing transactions. And me, I had a new plan. Same lodge, same night, same fire pit and hot cider and mittens and Christmas music, but not the same people. I had finally understood something that had taken me too long to see. Love is not a payment plan, and I'm not the overdraft protection on anyone's life. I didn't announce it. I didn't post about it. I didn't even tell my neighbors, who often peeked through their blinds when someone pulled into my driveway. All I did was pack my bag. The same duffel I had folded away in disappointment a week before now sat upright on the bed, open, ready. But this time, it held something different. New names, new purpose, new peace. I filled it with what I truly needed. A lavender candle wrapped in flannel. A photo of Harold in the snow. A light blue scarf I'd knitted last spring for no one in particular. And 6 small gift bags, each one tied with twine and labeled with the name of a woman who had once told me she felt forgotten. Carol, Frances, Nora, Denise, Beverly, and me. We didn't look like the families on Christmas cards. We weren't blood. We weren't perfect. But we all knew what it felt like to be erased quietly by the people we gave the most to. I rented a van with all-wheel drive. Colorado winters are not forgiving. And picked them up one by one. Each woman came out of her house with cautious hope in her eyes, the kind that's been bruised a few too many times to rise too quickly. But when they saw the others inside, saw their names already handwritten on tags inside the van, something shifted. Frances was the first to speak. I don't know what I did to deserve this. I looked at her through the rearview mirror and smiled. You existed. That's enough. The drive to Aspen was quiet in the best way. Not awkward. Not heavy. Just peaceful. Every so often, someone would point out a patch of snow-covered pines or laugh softly at a memory. But mostly, we just sat. The radio playing carols low in the background. It felt like a kind of prayer. When we arrived at the lodge, The woman at the front desk greeted us warmly. "Are you Mrs. Parker?" "I am," I said. She glanced at the new list of guests, then smiled. "Welcome. Everything's just as you requested." And it was the fire pit, the large cedar dining table, the same chef I had hired weeks ago, still expecting a Christmas Eve dinner for 8. I'd called to reassign the menu. No ham, no mac and cheese. This time, it was roasted squash, lentil soup, and cinnamon bread pudding. Warm, grounding food. Food that felt like home. That night, we unpacked slowly, claiming rooms without fuss. No one bickered over beds. No one sighed about their preferences. It was the simplest check-in I'd ever experienced. Later, as snow fell steadily outside, we all curled up in the living room with tea. Beverly pulled a worn photo from her purse, her brother in uniform. Long past, Carol took out a scarf her daughter had sent her years ago and hadn't called since. Nora, ever soft-spoken, whispered, "It's been a long time since I sat in a room where no one expected me to serve or stay quiet." That broke something in me, in all of us. I reached into my bag and took out the candle, set it gently on the coffee table, lit the wick. Lavender filled the room. I placed Harold's photo beside it, and finally, after everything, said what I hadn't been able to say the night he died. "Thank you for making me strong enough for this." The women didn't ask me to explain. They just sat with me, present, whole. Later that evening, we stepped outside in our coats and boots and stood in the circle of light cast by the fire pit. I passed each woman a small card. "On it," I said, "write the one thing you wish someone had said to you when you were younger." No one hesitated. They wrote quietly, carefully, then folded the cards and placed them beside the candle. Frances went first. She looked around the circle and said, "I would have wanted someone to tell me, you are not a phase. You are a foundation." "Hey," Beverly whispered, "you don't have to keep proving your worth." Denise added, "You deserve rest, not just work followed by more work." Each one shared. Each one let something go. I said mine last. "You don't have to be needed to be loved." Then we stood in silence, not out of awkwardness, but because it felt holy, sacred. The snow drifted down like confetti from the sky, quiet and shimmering. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel on the edge of something. I felt inside it. Inside a moment I didn't have to earn. No one asked where my son was. No one pitied me. No one suggested I reach out to clear the air. Because in this space, we all understood that not every wound needs a reunion. Some just need witness, and we were that for each other. Before heading back in, I turned to look at the trail of footprints behind us, soft impressions in the snow. I imagined them there the next morning, frozen in time, proof that we had shown up for each other, that we had walked through the cold not towards someone else's approval, but toward our own belonging. That night, I slept better than I had in years, not because everything was resolved, but because I had nothing left to prove. 3 days after we returned from the lodge, my inbox chimed. I was folding laundry, fresh sheets that still smelled like mountain air, when I saw it. Subject: "Just want to clear the air." From Evan Parker. I didn't open it right away. I stood by the kitchen counter, one sock in hand, heart calm. Not because I didn't care, but because, for the first time, I didn't need anything from that email. Eventually, I sat down and clicked it. "Hi, Mom. We're back now." The trip didn't go as planned. A lot went wrong. Maybe some of that was our fault. Maybe we didn't handle things the best way. Tanya says hi. She was really overwhelmed. You know how she gets about structure. Anyway, we're trying to explain things to the kids. It's been tough. I also wanted to ask if you could maybe refund the original deposit we sent toward the trip, or even part of it. We had to rebook a lot on credit. It's gotten pretty bad. I know you probably feel hurt, but we're still family. Let me know. Evan. I stared at the screen. Then I reread that one line. If you could maybe refund the original deposit we sent. Deposit. He hadn't sent a dime. The only thing he contributed was the expectation that I'd fund everything quietly, then fade out of view so his wife could curate her perfect trip. And now that the trip had collapsed, Now that everything they built on my effort had fallen apart, they wanted me to rescue them again. I didn't reply, not out of spite, but because some things speak louder in silence. Instead, I poured myself a glass of iced tea, sat by the window, and looked out at the backyard. The bird feeder Harold built still hung by the fence. The chickadees had returned, flitting like tiny notes of music between the branches. Peace doesn't always arrive with closure. Sometimes, it comes when you stop arguing with people who were never listening to begin with. A week later, a small package arrived at my doorstep. It was from Nora. Inside, a postcard she had written to herself from the lodge. On the back, a single sentence in shaky handwriting. This is what family feels like when no one expects you to be useful, just present. I placed it beside Harold's photo on the mantle. And that night, I lit the lavender candle once more. I didn't cry. I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt whole. Because here's the thing, they never tell women like us, mothers, caretakers, givers. You are allowed to change the locks on the doors you kept open for people who only came to take. You are allowed to redirect your love toward those who hold it gently. You're allowed to stop performing gratitude for people who've never said thank you. You are allowed to be free. 2 weeks after the trip, Beverly invited all of us to her home for lunch. We sat around her worn dining table, passing salad and stories. There was no Instagram filter, no matching outfits, just the sound of forks and laughter and healing. When I got home that night, there was another email from Evan. This time, I didn't even open it because there was nothing left to explain. I had loved him, raised him, sacrificed for him. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me as a person and started seeing me as a function, something to depend on when convenient, discard when not. And the truth is, you can't teach someone to value you by giving them more of what they already take for granted. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is step out of the picture and let the blank space speak for itself. I didn't erase him. I just stopped showing up to prove my worth. And in that absence, I found myself that Christmas. I set the table for one. Not because I was alone, but because I wanted to. I made soup, lit a candle, turned on the record player, and let Nat King Cole sing me through the evening. And when midnight rolled around, I stood on the back porch, wrapped in a blanket, and looked up at the stars. The sky was quiet, and so was I. But it wasn't a lonely silence. It was the kind that says, you survived, you endured, and now you rest. And now, if you're still here, reading, listening, I want to ask you something. Have you ever poured yourself into a family, a relationship, a life, and still felt like you were always on the outside looking in? Have you ever given and given, thinking one day someone would finally say, you matter? If so, you're not alone. And more importantly, you don't have to keep waiting for recognition that may never come. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge story isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. So if this story touched a part of your heart, tell me, what is one thing you wish someone had told you when you were 30? I'm listening. And you never know. Your words might be exactly what another woman out there needs to hear tonight.